you guys have the one platform, right? You don't do custom features. You do something that makes sense for the whole platform, right?
Yeah. So what I've learned in my 55 years of being on this earth is when you start chasing new shiny objects, you go down real fast. So just yesterday, not yesterday, Wednesday, Monday, just on Monday, I got an RFP request from a pretty well-known manufacturer. You probably all know the name of this company. And they're doing an RFP for TMS. And so they send this RFP out, and it had all of these things that they wanted on it. And the other people they sent it to are all the people that you would know the big names of, right? It was the Trimble, it was Blue Jay, McLeod, a couple of others. But we don't chase those opportunities because the bigger the customer, the more customization they want. And they want to have that customization. They want it free, they want it fast. And they want you to fly up and entertain them and take them to play golf. And so you might have a big organization.
Hey, this is Paul from Freight Caviar, and you're listening to the Daily Freight Caviar podcast, where I interview people from the logistics industry on freight tech, outsourcing, and other interesting topics. If you want to check out more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com. All right, so we have Tim Higham, which is the founder and CEO of Ascend TMS, and Leo Gorodinski, the CTO of Alvys. On episode 3 of this series that we're doing, talking about TMS and software development. Definitely going to have a very interesting conversation here. Before I clicked record, Leo had a lot of questions for Tim. So since essentially we want the audience to know what Leo was asking, Leo, if you could, well, first, maybe if both of you want to introduce yourselves for the audience. I'll start with Tim. Tim, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. For those that don't know me, Tim Higham. I'm from the UK, lived in the United States for 34 years now. This is my third company. The other two I built, sold, got into this by complete accident. And it's probably my last venture, if I'm honest. And so we're a TMS software product. Everybody knows us. We're the SMB TMS. Transportation management system for the little guy. So, we have just crossed 47,000 companies that use Ascend in paying customers in over 30 countries today. And we know our niche really well. Our niche is the small carrier broker shipper. Our average number of trucks per fleet for a carrier is 5.6 trucks per fleet. Average number of users on a broker account is 2.9 users. We've got 300 or 400 users. Our largest customer is a large $12 billion a year distributor with 3 offices and hundreds of employees. Our smallest customer will be somebody that literally gets an account while we're talking today. So we are specifically targeted toward the small end of the market, but as we keep building out products, we get larger customers just by definition. So we compete with Alvys, but we compete with another 20 or 30 different TMSs out there. But we also, cooperate with a lot of them too. There's a lot of TMSs out there that are specifically niched around certain areas of the market, whether, as we were just talking before we were recording, e-commerce. You've got TMSs specifically focused on international business or air freight, ocean freight. You have TMSs specifically for bulk commodities or drayage. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity in this world to be able to build a TMS specifically for a niche in the market, and you can make a very good living doing that. So that's Ascend, www.thefreetms.com. Easy to remember.
Cool. Well, and I'd love to learn more about the story. How did you get into building a TMS? How did you decide it? How long has it been?
Yeah, so I was a freight broker beforehand, and as a part of the freight broker, we had an asset-based side of the business. So when we started the brokerage back in 2001, and by the way, for the record, I have no ownership interest. There's no conflict of interest. I have no interest at all in any brokerage or carrier today. Pure software. I wouldn't go into the brokerage business if you paid me to. So, but we built a nice sized brokerage, and as part of that, we had assets. Why do we have assets? Because many customers, you call them up and they say, well, we don't need any more brokers. Do you have assets? So we had our own assets, a small fleet, and we would try to fill the assets first, and whatever we couldn't fill on the asset side, we brokered out, to whoever we could. So As we started the business, though, I used to build computer games when I was a kid. So I'm literally going back to, I got my first computer in 1981. I was 14, 15 years old, a Sinclair Electronic ZX81 with 16K of RAM. So you can imagine how small that is. I mean, an email today is more than 16K. And so we were writing in machine code and really primitive, disgusting games, with 16 colors. But, we made a nice living at it. As a 14, 15-year-old, it was good pocket money. When I came to America, I did a few other things, all computer related. I won't bore you to death. But I got into the brokerage business because my then ex-wife ran a pretty large nursery shipping plants and trees around the country. And the biggest problem she had was the broker she had. I didn't even know what a freight broker was, but this guy, I'll never forget the name. They were called Lighthouse Brokerage. They don't exist today anymore. Surprisingly, they were terrible. But the trucks would never show up, and when they did show up, they had the wrong paperwork. It was a mess. And so I asked her, do you have Excel on your computer? And of course, she had Office, the Office pack, and she had Excel. So I wrote a bunch of macros, and next thing you know, I'd made this really basic TMS. And then all the other nurseries, the growers of trees and plants around kept saying, oh, well, when are you going back to the Atlanta region and going to South Carolina, to Alabama? And we would do what was called load to ride, LTR, which I learned, which is we go 3 or 4 pickups and then we go all the way to Alabama. And it just grew from there. And, we continued to add on to the product. It was very basic at the time. And then we wrote it in Fox Pro. For you techno nerds out there, you'd know what I'm talking about. But we got to the point where we looked at the big TMSs, the McLeods, and at the time TMW and Mercury Gate, and they were just too expensive for a small broker with 10 users at the time. They were just too expensive. So we decided, let's write our own. And this is before the internet was a big thing. There was browsers, but it wasn't like it is today. There was no open sockets and being able to do things live in real time. Everything was just batched. And so I realized we couldn't afford it. And so we decided, let's build our own. And we did. We grew that company to about 40 million in revenue, the actual brokerage. Private equity firm bought it. At the time, I wanted to exit. I'm making a long story short here, Leo. And I decided that I was going to exit, but I bought the IP, the intellectual property, for InMotion Global. That was the name of that product. InMotion Global was the name of the TMS. And I took 2 of my best guys with me, the 3 of us. I put $500,000 into a bank account and said, look, I just bought the IP. I put $500,000 in this account. We got a little office in an office park. I said, when that $500,000 goes to zero, the egg timer runs out and we all do something different. I was financially secure. They weren't. So I gave them both a piece of the company. And we started writing code, the 3 of us. And 8 months later, we put a soft launch out there. Few hours into the soft launch, we got our first account was created, and then 6 or 7 hours later, the next account, and then 5 hours later, the next account, and we just grew from there. Today, I think we've done pretty good. As most people know us, we're very profitable. We got no debt. We grow. We average a brand new account every 23 minutes. So that's kind of my story. And I think that we've done well because I truly understand, bro. I truly understand that. I live that nasty, terrible, paper, messy world, just like Paul did for many years. And my guys that I brought on with me also lived that life. Even though they were, on the tech side, they understood the business. And it's hard to just know IT and explain to them how this business works, as you know, Leo.
Tim,
Right.
is that why you never open a freight brokerage again, even if someone pays you, because of all the paperwork?
Not a chance. Freight brokerage is extremely difficult. You are having to please 2 very difficult to please parties. You've got customers, shippers on one side, expect the lowest price and the best service all the time. If you've created 100 loads for them and 99 really, really well, and one doesn't go, we remember you on that one forever. And then on the other side, the carriers you can find a good carrier that is good for a week or 2 because their 5, 6, 7 drivers are good, but the driver turnover is so bad. If you go back to any carrier in the industry today, from 1 year to the next, 100% of the drivers have changed. The ratio of driver turnover is over 100%. And so even if good drivers are at a company when you were lucky enough to find them, 6 months later, they've all gone. They went somewhere else to be replaced by other drivers. So finding good carriers is really difficult to hold on to. It truly is. The owner of the company might be good, but his weakness is the drivers that are in the cabs. So cut a long story short, brokerage is trying to please two sets of parties that are both basically unpleasable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know, this story, it's a great story, a little bit similar to how Alvys came to be. Nick, the founder, he was also an operator for a long time, and then he set out to build something for himself because nothing out there worked well for him. It was either too expensive or just not good enough, and he set out to start building something for himself. He wasn't a coder, and that's just such a tremendous advantage that you had, where you were building video games as a kid. And it sounds all fun, but building video games is probably one of the most difficult engineering challenges out there. And I'm sure
they were
that
terrible video games, Leo.
Well, yeah, nevertheless, right? Nevertheless, I'm sure that that experience was helpful when you guys started coding. And then the other thing you mentioned, also, this is something that I'm finding to be very, very important, is for the developer to understand the business. And you said you had a team that you brought over from the brokerage operation. These coders.
Okay. My CTO Justin Heath and my COO today, Chris Parker, both came from the brokerage operation, and they've been working there for 10 years ish. So understood the business both on the asset side and the brokerage side. So their apprenticeship was that 10 years plus with the brokerage. And so what we do now is when we bring people on, we either try to find somebody that came from a world where they've served their apprenticeship. So they might come from another brokerage or a carrier or some kind of world where they learn the difference between a company driver and an owner operator. If you talk to an IT person, and the first question you ask is, what's the difference between an owner operator and a company driver? If they don't know that, you probably want to move on to somebody else, because that's one of the most basic things, right, in transportation. Or ask them what's the difference between a trucking company and a freight broker. If they don't know that, and they can't give you a half decent answer, they might be great at coding, but you might want to move on for somebody else to be your core. However, there are instances where you can hire somebody that isn't familiar with the industry if it's for a very specific project. So several years ago, we made a big decision that we were going to move toward microservices and put all of our functions and features on microservices, so that when anything broke, it didn't break everything else behind it or in front of it. And so we specifically hired a person that their job was simply to take existing functionality and to take that out and build it into a microservice and connect it to the other microservices. For that is a robotic type of mentality. You don't need to understand transportation. We hired another guy about a year ago. We're on right now, this is our second iteration of Ascend. We're working on our third. We've got two choices here, right? One is to just keep milking the cow till it dies. We're making fantastic money, millions of dollars a year in profit. But if we rest on laurels and we just think that nothing's going to happen in the future to hurt us, we'll be stupid. So about a year ago, Ascend 3.0 started to be written, and we have a guy that all he does is taking some of the newer technologies that we've identified, and once again is reskinning the system around those technologies. And so again, they don't need to really understand transportation. They're learning along the way. That's their apprenticeship, but they don't need to understand the business like I or Chris or Justin do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of facing the same challenges where we'd like to have a subject matter expert on board. So we try to get people that are in the industry. We have, for example, one of our product managers. He actually used to be a driver, a dispatcher, all those things. And we kind of poached him from one of our own tenants, and now he works for us. And so he's great because he knows the business. He works directly with the engineers to make sure they get the features right. Also on the support side, if somebody's having an issue, he's usually able to identify it. But then at the same time, he alone can't be a project manager, because being a project manager isn't that easy. It takes a certain type of skill that's outside of any particular industry, and so we have to balance these things. Just like you need a guy that just does the tech, and the same thing for project management. We want to have subject matter experts, but we also want to have people that are experienced in project management in general.
Yeah, no, I agree. We have project managers, and all they do is write SOWs, statements of work or scope of work. We don't write a line of code for any new feature unless a scope of work is written. The scope of work usually takes longer than the actual coding takes.
Right.
The reason we do that is when you do a scope of work, the partner that we're working with will see essentially a multi-page blueprint of what the end product will look like. Screenshots. They'll see the logic, they'll see the if this then that kind of format of what happens if something is pressed. They will see the UX and UI design. They'll see the color palette of the things. And then when they sign that document then is then assigned to a programmer. But the programmer doesn't even know that they're going to get that until that is signed by our partner or the person that we're doing that feature for. And we found that it's the old measure twice, cut once theory, but we take it a step further. It's measure 3 times and cut once, because once that has been signed off, if anybody at that partner says to us, oh, well, we thought it was going to be X, Y, and Z, we say, oh, look at page 17 here or page 4. This is what we all agreed to. And it stops scope creep from happening.
Yeah. Oh, understood. So how do you guys, to touch on that a bit more, how do you guys go about prioritizing things? How do you decide what you're going to build next?
Yeah. So we use a pretty sophisticated project management system here, and we have a methodology for all of our existing users to be able to submit feature requests, and it's built into the software. And when they come in every Monday at 11 a.m., we sit down, not me now personally anymore, but the customer service leader, Rick, sits down and goes through all of those items. And let's just say, just for argument's sake, there's 10 of those items. Usually we find that 8 of them have already been asked by somebody. 1 of them is an absolutely atrociously terrible idea. And 1 of them is a really good idea that nobody's asked for yet. So the good idea that nobody's asked for yet will go into our list of items that we should add to a send. It isn't scored in any way. We score it later. The 8 items that have already been asked for by others, we go into our project management system and we put the name, an account number, and details of that person that asked for it. We send them a nice email to say, hey, that project has been asked for. It's on our schedule. We expect it to be released on Q3 of 2023, whatever the date range is. So they feel satisfied that they asked and they were heard. And then eventually when we build those new things, our system then has a running tally of all the people that asked for it. So if we come out with a new feature and there's 17 people that had asked for that, they get a notice before we go live automatically that says, hey, this is about to go live on June. We have a code push today. So June 22nd, there's a code push. Your item that you asked for on this day is included. Call us if you've got any questions. So they feel, wow, they built that for me. Well, we didn't build it for them. 17 people asked for it. We built it for those 17, but we know if 17 people ask for something, 3,000 people probably would like it as well. And then the atrociously bad idea, we send them a nice email. We don't say, hey, that idea was atrociously bad. We say, hey, thanks for your suggestion. We'll look into it, kind of thing. So that's what we do. We use our project management system as a funnel to be able to take all of those inputs and then decide, what the output should be over time.
Got it. And I think you sort of answered this, but it sounds like you guys have the one platform, right? You don't do custom features. You do something that makes sense for the whole platform, right?
Yeah. So what I've learned in my 55 years of being on this earth is when you start chasing new shiny objects, you go down real fast. So just yesterday, Wednesday, Monday, just on Monday, I got an RFP request from a pretty well-known manufacturer. You probably all know the name of this company. And they're doing an RFP for TMS. And so they send this RFP out and it had all of these things that they wanted on it. And the other people they sent it to are all the people that you would know the big names of, right? It was the Trimble, it was Blue Jay, McLeod, a couple of others. But we don't chase those opportunities, because the bigger the customer, the more customization they want. And they want to have that customization. They want it free. They want it fast. And they want you to fly up and entertain them and take them to play golf. And so you might have a big organization that's $1 billion, but they've only got, 7 or 8, 9, 10 people in their department for freight. So if you're charging on a per user basis, it's pretty well documented. Our price for our premium system, when you get everything, is only $79 a month. So 10 people at $79, $790 a month. That's not enough money for us to fly around and take them on, meals and to play golf with people. Certainly not enough to build custom products. So we say no. Every RFP that comes by us, we don't chase that. What we do say is, hey, 95% of the things you want, we do. You can start right now. Go to thefreetms.com, give it a whirl. 15 seconds, you'll be up and running. But we don't bother chasing that any further, because it's just a waste of resources. Because even for the 5 people, this is how I feel, even for the 5 that are going to reply, McLeod and Trimble and Blue Jay, only one of them is going to win it. So the other 4 are going to fly around and they're going to get all excited, and the salesperson is going to come running down to your office, Leo, and say, "Oh, I've got a prospect." Yeah, but if you've got a prospect and 5 other people are already going for it, that you only have a 1 in 5 chance of winning that prospect. So we just find that customization for us doesn't work. What we do is, when we come out with a new feature set, when we do it every 2 weeks, we allow the user, we tell the user, hey, this feature is added to your system right now. You can use it. If you don't want to use it, don't turn it on. If you want to use it, turn it on and you'll see all the buttons and things. But if you don't do rail, and we add a rail feature, and you'd never do rail, you've never done rail, you don't want to do rail, then just turn off the rail feature set, and all of the rail crap just goes away from Ascent, because you don't need to see screen clutter. If you look at some of the screenshots from McLeod and Trimble and just others that are typical, installed software bases, they do an upgrade and they add rail and ocean and air, and all of a sudden your screen just like spaghetti. It's complicated. So we don't do any custom work whatsoever. We never have done, and we don't ever want to do custom work, because we just find that it's very unprofitable.
Yeah, that makes total sense. We get into some of those discussions as well. Like we'll start talking to a potential client, and they're a huge operation, usually vertically integrated. Like they have the distribution centers, and then they have their own trucks, and everything is bunched in. But they have very unique, interesting processes that have been around for like 100 years, and it's tempting to start trying to attack those problems. But our strategy is also to just consolidate everything into one platform. Lots of different features, but one platform. Now, I wanted to ask about how features first get released, and how do you iterate on them and reach a certain level of maturity, right? So to set the context a little bit, I mentioned earlier about this mentality of move fast and break things, which works in some cases. It's a great alternative to like a waterfall approach, where you have this very long analysis and design process. But then on the other hand, moving fast and breaking things doesn't always work in the context of logistics for a mission critical system. You also mentioned earlier that you guys measure 3 times, cut once. So I'm trying to wrap my head around this process where, on the one hand, we do want to move fast, but then we don't want to break things. And then a lot of the features that we build, there is this sense of an MVP, minimum viable product, where if we build this feature is going to be usable. But in many cases, that bar is a little bit higher in the context of transportation. The minimum viable product is usually a little bit bigger than in another context. And so, how do you guys manage that, right? If you want to release a feature, you think you could spend more time analyzing it and designing it, or you could release what you have and get feedback from users. How do you guys approach this?
Yeah, so there's you really asked several questions there in that in 2 minutes. So I'll try and take them in the order that I heard them. When somebody, if we've had 1,000 people ask for one feature and one person asks for one feature, it's clear that the 1,000, obviously there's a need there. So we look at that 1,000 people and then we say, well, this feature, is it easy or is it hard? If it's 1,000 people that ask, and it's an easy thing to do, it's a no-brainer. Put it on the list. Let's get that done. If it's one person that asks for something and it's a difficult thing to do, that just goes to the bottom of the list. We'll get to it in 10 years because one person wanted it. A lot of people, we don't think will need it, and it's very difficult to do. So what we try to do, we score everything and we give them a score on whether it's easy to do and the impact that it has on the number of users. So we have a pretty good idea that if we build something, we get a decent idea whether the uptake is going to be one person or a lot of people. And so we tend to focus on the thing that affects lots of people. And that's always served us very well. As far as the MVP goes, minimum viable products, it's always a difficult thing when you do an integration, because if you've got two systems, you've got a Send TMS that is your core TMS, and then they want to work with My Carrier Packets, which is an integration of ours, which is for broker onboarding, right? Everybody knows My Carrier Packets, or RMIS, same thing with Ascend. But for all intents and purposes, let's just discuss My Carrier Packets. I don't know why it's on my screen up here. So the question is always, there's two systems. You can do a bunch of stuff in Ascend and you can do a bunch of stuff in My Carrier Packets. How integrated do you want it to be? Because the user often can have just literally a tab open on their browser. And if they need to do something and go to My Carrier Packets and literally just enter an MC number or a DOT number, something simple, then that's an easy integration between Ascend and My Carrier Packets. We're just passing over a number, and then we can bring open in another tab or a modal the result from that. But once you start going back and forth to decision making, that's when it gets really complicated. So what people, when they ask for something, they just say, we want an integration with that or this or something. They haven't thought through what that really means. And so what we have to do is to help them think through, well, what are you trying to achieve? So if you're trying to just be in Ascend and then click a button where there's an existing DOT number and we pass that to My Carrier Packets and some information shows up, fantastic, we can do that. But if you then expect then My Carrier Packets to pass that back to Ascend and then Ascend to look at that and make a decision and then pass that back to My Carrier Packets, that gets very convoluted. And that is where what we usually find is their business process is then intertwined with the integration, because they say, well, we do it this way. That's going to go to this lady called Sarah who hands it to Billy. And then, so what we just try to do, we try to say, what is the minimum viable product that will satisfy 90% of the users? And the 10%, they can complain all they want to. We'll get to that one day, but I want to please the 10%, the 90%. And even if I have to ignore the 10% of users. And we've done many integrations where people will say, thanks for the integration, that's great, but can you do this? But that 10% want to do it all slightly different ways. And we can't do it all slightly different ways because, that's not the business we're in. We're a small group of people that, my COO does this the best way. He explains that we are experts at picking up dimes. So we have tens of thousands of paying customers that make us a small amount of money, but we have to keep those people happy so they keep charging their credit cards. And that 10% of difficult to please people, we just try to say, hey, listen, if it's not good enough for you, you can get McLeod, spend $500,000 with them. I'm sure if that 10% is so important to you, McLeod might do that, or Blue Jay, or whatever other system, Blue Yonder, whatever other system it is out there, they can go there because we don't want those customers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I get it. The integrations, a lot of times a customer might think of that as a yes or no question. Do you guys have integration with this? And it's never that simple. What do you actually want to accomplish? And in their mind, they might have an idea. Well, if you guys are integrated with My Carrier Packet, that means like I never have to go to My Carrier Packet or something like that. Yeah. But you really have to.
And often they don't really know what they want, to be honest, Leo. Right, they don't really know. They just say, well, are you integrated with Comdata? Yep, we're integrated with Comdata. But Comdata's got 15 products. They probably mean, are you integrated so I can download the fuel card information, which Ascend does. But they've got 14 other products besides fuel cards. And so, it's a very difficult question to answer if somebody says, are you integrated with Comdata?
Yeah. Yeah. And similar as we go out to sell and market our product, we're getting into these challenges where on the one hand, this space seems kind of crowded. There's a lot of TMSs and they all do the same thing, like load management, efficiency, all that stuff. But again, those aren't like yes or no questions. It's not a yes or no feature. Do you have a dispatch planner. It's not a yes or no. Like, what does it actually look like? What are the workflows? And so how do we differentiate ourselves, right? Because we all kind of have the same stuff, but it's never quite that simple.
Yeah, and what do you mean by dispatch planner? Ask 10 people, 10 dispatchers
Exactly.
with 10 different carriers, and they'll all tell you what a dispatch planner means to them and what it should look like.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think it's like a well understood term. Like, we have what we call a dispatch planner, but again, what that means for you, who knows? It could be vastly different. And so this is one of the challenges we have in building this technology. A challenge for the engineers, a challenge for the project managers is really trying to understand the user, really putting themselves in their shoes and really trying to understand and pull it out of them, because the user won't always know exactly what they want. They know their workflow, but how maps the technology, that's something that we have to get at. And that's a big skill set that we need to pick up, is being able to communicate with our users, really understand what they need and kind of read between the lines, so to say.
Yep, agreed.
Now, and I keep asking questions. I don't know if anybody else has questions. I could go on.
I actually wanted to budge in real quick. So Ascend TMS and Alvys took two different approaches in building the company, because Tim, you started off with it was three of you with $500,000 in the bank account. And I think you told me on the first podcast we recorded that you went to like 260,000.
274,000. I'll never forget it. We got to 274, and then it started going up again. And 2 years in, we were profitable. Okay. And if you had lost, or if you had spent that $500,000, you would have just closed down the business. Was that the plan, or? I don't know. It's one of those questions you ask that, I don't know. So if we were running a race and it was a marathon, and I got into the stadium and I could see the yellow line, the ticker tape or whatever, would I invest a little bit more money to get to the end? Of course I would. I mean, sure. Let's be honest. But if I saw that we were still in the middle of the marathon and I couldn't even see the stadium from where I was, and they wanted another $500,000, I'd be like, guys, maybe it's time we tried something else. So if we were close, I would have put more money in. Okay. And then Alvys, you basically hired a lot of developers from the get-go. Tim, just real quick, how many developers do you have on your team? 7, 8, maybe 7 or 8.
Okay. And
I'm of the ethos that is hiring a core group of A++ developers that know the business. You pay them really well. You give them equity in the company. You treat them well, and they're a good fit. That is better. I've got friends, CEOs of some huge companies that are partners of ours, and we become very friendly, and they literally have 200, 300, 400 developers. And, what happens is you might have 100 good ones, but you have 200 or 300 that are subpar. And then you've got 10 or 20 of those that, how the hell they got into the company, I have no idea. And so some of my friends tell me the bad people undo all the good that a lot of the good people do, and they make the code base a mess. So, we are very stringent on code reviews. We code review everything before we go. We have a full-time QA guy. All he does is just QA. We do a lot of RPA where we build thousands of loads in our QA system, and it acts like it's a dispatcher doing stuff, and any error codes that come back, because you have to regression test, right? So just putting a new feature out is great. The feature might work fantastic, but if it broke 3 or 4 things that, are core to your TMS, you get a lot of phone calls. So we like small group of people. I don't particularly like other human beings, I'll be honest. I like computers. I like my core team. I like them, but I don't want this company ever to be more than, we have 19 full-time people. I don't want it to be more than 20 or 25, just because 20 to 25 is, you can handle that. And I think I've said this to you, Paul. Sorry if I'm talking too much. I've said this to you before, Paul. If you make, so one of the wisest guys, I ever knew said, Tim, if you ever happen to make $500 million a year,
500 million or 500,000?
No, so he said to me, if you ever make 5 million a year, he says, never risk that for 50 million. And if you get lucky enough to make 50 million, never risk that to make 500 million. And I said, well, why? And he said, because the guy with 500 million, he might own his own private jet. He said, and the guy that's got $50 million, he might have a 16th share in a private jet. And the guy with $5 million a year, he's flying around, on a jet with a jet card. He said, but they all fly around on the same private jet. He said, never gamble 5 million for 50 or 50 for 500. You can still make a great living, with 500,000, a million, 5 million. So where we are today, this is my third company, and I'm happy where I am. I don't want to have 300 people. That's a nightmare. 300 people working for you. I want 20 people that we go on vacation with every year. As you know, Paul, I mean, we're taking everybody, we took them all to Europe last year. We're going on a cruise in September. We take all the employees and all their families and we pay for everything. 300 people, you can't do that anymore. And if you did, I wouldn't know half the people that went. So
yeah. And then Leo, I'm not sure if you want to pick on this, but how many employees does Alvys have right now?
We have quite a bit more. I mean, we have almost 80 engineers, right? So it's like an order of magnitude of difference. But I totally hear you. And to just explain this a little bit, when Nick, the founder of Alvys, when he started building the TMS, he was not a tech guy. He didn't have any programmers, but he found a team, a technology team, which at that time wasn't that many people. I think it was under 10 people at that time.
Yeah.
And they started building it, but they had a challenge at the beginning because none of them knew the business. Only Nick knew the business. He was a great operator, but he then also had to train all these engineers. So there's this sort of onboarding period that they went through. And then by the time I partnered with Nick, this team had around 20 people on it. And we've grown it since then. We opened up a whole new site. And that's kind of how we ended up where we are. But all the things that you mentioned, those are things that I'm very mindful of. I'm also of the opinion that the ideal team would consist of a few really senior, really good engineers that can set the ground for everyone else. Set a vision in terms of the code quality, of the system architecture, the whole software development process, the QA process, and then you could hire new people that can kind of fit into the system quite well. But that's an incredible level of efficiency that you guys have, and all the benefits that you said are absolutely true. The nature of the organization, which you alluded to, when you go from 20 people to 100 people, changes substantially. And that's what I've seen. That's what I've seen at Jet, for example, where I was there since the very beginning, when it was just 3 people in a room together, go out to lunch together every day, to then having 20 people where you kind of know everybody, you see them all the time, but maybe you don't know their name, to where later on every day I see somebody new that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And that changes.
And I don't mean to be dismissive. 80 people is manageable. I see a lot of the VC funded companies, you get these guys that, get 10, 20, $30 million, and then they go on a hiring spree. And within a year, they've hired 50 or 100 people. And you just know that bad people have got in there. And sometimes I talk to these people, they're potential partners. And when I'm talking to them, I think, how did that person actually find their way into this company? I mean, they are not representing the company well. Right. And I don't call the CEO and say, by the way, Fred over here, is just absolutely atrocious. But they find their way in, because if you're hiring 50 to 100 people in the space of months or a year, bad people will find their way in, and bad apples will rot the barrel from the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it gets very, very difficult to keep a high bar in the company and get people that raise the bar. The other thing that starts to dissolve as the company grows is the sense of ownership, where those core group of engineers that have been around for a while, this product is their job, but it's also kind of like their baby. It's something that they personally care about a lot. They're personally invested into this. But then as the team grows and you hire more and more people, they feel further and further detached from this, and that also hurts quality. But yeah, I totally hear you. It's so easy to spend a lot of money on engineering and you keep hiring, and that seems like the right thing to do. The middle managers and the directors, they want to hire, they want to have bigger teams, and so they keep hiring. It was actually when I spent a couple of years at Walmart, which is obviously a huge organization, they had this problem where nobody wants to reduce their headcount. And so they have a team that's working on this one thing. If they want to build another thing, well, they'll just get another team to work on that other thing and keeping this thing. And they just keep adding more and more people that are working on pointless things. And
well, the nature of human beings, human beings, generally speaking, are greedy. They want power, they want influence at their basic core. And if you have somebody that used to manage 100 people and now you're taking away 90 of them, now there's, because the project's finished and there's only 10 people, they feel a lot less powerful than they used to. Being at a dinner party doesn't sound as good when you say, I manage 10 people. It sounds good when you say, I manage 100 people. And as an organization gets bigger, human beings don't leave companies. Human beings leave the CEO or the founder because they're not getting the love and the hugs that they used to get, not literal hugs. So, if you get to 100, if there's 100 people working in a company, it's hard for you or me or Ava, Paul, to love and hug those people and give them respect and that daily nod and you're doing a great job, because you don't have the time for it. When a company is only 20 people, you still have time to do that. We pay bonuses here twice a year. We used to do it once a year. Now we do it twice a year. We do it July 1st. So we're about to decide who gets what bonus, because they all know in the first half of the year, they work really hard and get things done. There'll be a bonus for them in July, and then it all starts again. There'll be another one in December. That's a time for us to sit down with them and hug them and tell them what a great job they're doing. It forces us as an organization to say, you are important to us. You matter. These are the projects that you did and finished. And this is what you deserve, and we give, I think, a significant amount of our profits to those people. And they go home to their husbands or wives or partners and they say, look what I got. And then the husband and wife and partner says, wow, what a great company you work for. You should stay there. Because ultimately, when they get an offer, when our people get an offer from Alvys, or they say, we're going to pay you 10,000 more, they're going to look, I don't want to go. I like Leo and Ava are great, but Tim and his company treats me well. We get bonuses. We go on company vacations with our kids, all paid for. And if you can do that with a small group, you can move forward with your company more lockstep than if you have 200-300 people. Then I think it gets dissipated and difficult.
Yeah, and the whole strategy for talent acquisition in this industry, I wonder. One of the arguments we make is that Alvys is a tech company, right? We're not a brokerage, not a carrier. We're a tech company, and in terms of building our tech brand, I want Alvys to be like a really cool place to work. I want our engineering team to be regarded at the same caliber as Google engineers, Facebook, Microsoft engineers, and I think there's a big opportunity in this industry where it seems to me right now a lot of the best software engineers are kind of Google grabbed them, Facebook grabbed them, Microsoft grabbed them, and they pretty much keep them there just so they don't go work at a startup, right? They're not actually working on something that's very important for Google. They just keep them away from everyone else. But I think now time is ripe for the logistics space to tap into that talent pool and to say, hey, do you want to go work at Facebook and allow people to leave a mean comment on a video, or do you want to help the supply chain? And I'm hoping to kind of capitalize on this shift where a lot of people are going to be excited to work in.
Well, the good people tech. Want meaning, right? So if you're good and you're good, you want to do something meaningful. So the true story, I was in Santiago, Chile with my wife a couple of years ago. Complete true story. So we're at some ancient ruin or something, and we met this guy that was on a little tour that day, and he worked at Facebook. And he was a young guy. He was, I can't remember exactly his age, 28, 29. And he was on his own traveling South America. And I said, wow, it's really cool. You're a young guy, how long are you going to be in South America for? He said, oh, I'm going to be traveling for 2 months. I said, wow, fantastic. Your employer must, be really, good to you. And he said, oh, I work for Facebook. I said, oh, really? What do you do at Facebook? And he said, I manage the team that manage Facebook's Messenger product. I said, oh, really? I said, and they'll let you go for 2 months. How many people, do you have? He said, well, we have 130 some, he said, developers and, 100 and some customer service. And I said, you have 130 people for Messenger? I mean, Messenger is type a message and, Ava or Paul sees the message and I reply back, right? I mean, it's a very basic product. Maybe there's a few things you can add to it. 130 developers. And so to your point, there's got to be some of those 130 that sit around earning their money every day going, wow, all I'm doing is, well, nothing. And I want some meaning in my life. And eventually those people have to be able to realize they can come to organizations like ours and actually be heard, their ideas be listened to and implemented. And to me, even if you earn a little bit less money than a Facebook in San Francisco, if you can live in a nice metro or suburban area, or if you can live wherever you want to, earn a little bit less money, but have meaning, then to me, that's a more valuable life.
Yeah. Did you feel like when you evolved from the operations, the brokerage and the carrier business, did you feel that being a tech company now, you could draw better engineering talent? Like the argument we make sometimes is if we talk to a large carrier, so if we have a carrier with like 400 trucks, a lot of times they have their own tech team and they build it just for them. And that ends up working pretty well. But the argument we can make is that, well, we're a tech company. We can get better engineers, like we can get better tech. Do you see that playing out, or were you able to kind of build up the tech brand in that way, and you can draw somebody that wouldn't go work at a brokerage, but they'll go work at a tech company?
Yeah. So a couple of our guys, worked at brokers or carriers, and they built some kind of product, whatever that was. They spent 2 or 3 years working there. The product was finished essentially, and it was very customized just for that broker, for that carrier. So that was it. It worked, all the bugs were worked out. And so then they didn't really have too much to do. They were basically babysitters. They were highly paid babysitters. And even if they wanted to do things extra, the CEO or their manager said, well, no, the product is perfect now for what we want, that product. So they decided, I want to go have my ideas heard. And so they knew about the industry now. They built this product for several years. And so those are good people to get because they want to be more creative and are more likely to come work for, an Ascend or an Alvys because they want to unleash that creativity.
Right.
I also find too, what happens a lot is a lot of brokers and carriers, they create a product and the product, they go, wow, this is the best product ever. We should sell that in the market to other brokers and carriers, but they all fail. Every broker or every carrier that starts a technology product that they then try to sell to others fails, because if I'm a broker, a legit broker, and I've got somebody trying to sell me a TMS or some technology, and they're also a broker, my fear is if I use that product, they're going to try to steal my customers. Or if I'm a carrier and a broker is trying to give me free technology, but they're a broker, I don't care how good the technology is. If I'm a carrier using that technology, they're going to inside my system and see all my shippers, and they're going to start calling them, right, for more freight. So I feel too that the independence part is important. So sometimes these developers, are asked by their carrier or broker employer, hey, we're going to make this into its own product and we're going to try and sell it. And then for a year or two, they try to sell it, and they can't sell it. It just doesn't work because nobody in their right mind wants to use their competitor's product. So then they come to us because we are truly, it says it right on our website, 100% independent with no conflict of interest other than the success of our customers.
Right. Yeah. And so this is something I learned about the industry when I was getting into it a couple of years ago with Nick, where this neutrality is very, very important. It took me a while to kind of wrap my head around it. But yeah, so that's absolutely important. The other factor there's the neutrality question. But if a company wants to take a product they built for themselves and turn it into a multi-tenant system, there's also a substantial technical challenge, right? And the things that you can do with a small, relatively inexperienced team aren't necessarily, this kind of team won't necessarily be able to build a proper multi-tenant system, which is kind of like an order of magnitude increase in complexity.
Yeah, it's a whole different level. If you're going to build for one organization, you can use certain set of tools to build that, and it'd be absolutely fine, even if that company grows. But if you want to build a product or a service for many people, then it's an entirely different conversation. And I often tell people, scale is something that the word scale is used in SCALE, to scale something, is used way too nonchalantly. Hey, will that product scale? Yes, it'll scale. But they haven't really thought about what that word means. So scaling a product, where if it's an installed system and you have 10 customers, you can spend the time to install that, whether it's on their on-premise systems, or whether it's virtual servers or on a server rack, you can do that. But if you were to try to do that 10,000 times, that's virtually impossible. So you have to come up with a new concept of how software is built. Salesforce.com is a good example. If I go back now 20 or 30 years, when there was a store in the US called CompUSA, and you wanted a CRM system, you would go buy a CD from Goldmine or Act, and you would go home and install it on your system. And then Salesforce came out with this new CRM it wasn't even called the cloud then, a browser-based CRM, and it killed those two other products. The other products were good. I've used both of them many years ago. Goldmine and Act were good products, but they never took that product and moved it to the cloud. And Salesforce said, hey, we don't need all those CDs and all those stores doing distribution. We can just get everybody to come to this web browser, and we can do it for 90% less money. And that's how we built Ascend, was to copy essentially what Salesforce had done and use that same mentality. So our old system in Motion Global, when we built it at my prior brokerage and asset-based company, we did have a few other customers using it. And we quickly realized, if we're going to have 10,000 customers, we're going to need 100 people just doing installs and configurations and setups and things. So we literally had to make the hardest decision in our life, and we scrapped that. We basically sunsetted the system. Nobody uses it anymore. And we had to start writing the new system, Ascend TMS, from ground zero, using all of those same features that we had that were fantastic, but we had to start writing, and we had to suck it up for a year, 8 months, with no revenue coming in while we built the new product, the MVP of Ascend. And so scale is very important, and it kills a lot of companies. I see a lot of these TMSs out there, that there's a new one, it seems, once a month. And I can quickly see that, hey, this is great. You'll have 3 or 4 customers, and then you're going to go nowhere. It will never scale.
Yeah. Scale is a interesting concept. Like, I remember, for example, when I was a little kid, I still lived in Latvia, and it was a very marshy area. And so I'd go out and play, and there were like little creeks, and I was able to take a piece of wood that I found, put it over the creek, and cross the creek by just stepping on the wood, right? I mean, it was a tiny little creek, but nevertheless. And so in a sense, I thought, well, building bridges is pretty easy, right? You just put something hard across the area you want to cross, and then that's it. And the same thing is like building buildings, right? Like, well, if you want to build a 3-story building, that's fine. Build 4, just build more, keep building more stories. Well, nothing has to really fundamentally change. But the reality in tech is that essentially every order of magnitude of scaling requires you to re-architect the system from ground zero. So scaling, that's the whole challenge, right? It's not to say, well, we built the system, now we just got to grow the customer base. Well, it's not that simple. We got to scale the system at the same time.
Yeah, you're right. And that's why, web technologies, that some of the biggest and best true cloud-based systems, multi-tenant cloud-based systems have used. They're the technologies that you have to use if you're going to truly scale something. So you can build a nice business. I can name a dozen TMSs with 10 customers and 1 or 2, owners, founder owners, and they make a living, they make a salary, just enough to cover their bills. But they'll never go any further than that, because they've never thought about scale, not just the technology side, but also customer service. Where are all the bottlenecks? I imagine, visualization is a good thing for me to tell my team. Imagine a a plumbing pipe, and you've put the plumbing pipe in for the first time ever, and you look through one end of the pipe and it's beautiful, it's clear, and there's nothing inside it, and you put it in your house and everything's great. And as you start, having a family and you're flushing toilets and turning the shower on, over time, the little imperfections that are in that pipe will start to build up crud, and that you don't know where it's going to be, because when you first looked at that pipe, it looked beautiful, but the crud just builds up in different places, and people put crap down the toilet and, and in the sink. And before you know where you are, you've got bottlenecks in the pipe. And those bottlenecks will crush companies. And the bottleneck might be in your sales department. It could be in customer service. It could be, in your development area or partnerships. But you've got to be constantly pulling that pipe out and looking down it and cleaning the crud out, because I see many companies where I realize that, wow, they're never going to scale because the crud in their pipe is this area here. And I'm not going to, it could be anywhere in the company, but they're never going to get big because of all the bottlenecks.
Yeah. Now, one thing you mentioned earlier is that Ascend is on its like third version now.
We're writing the third version right now.
Okay. And so is that like a new front end or a new back end? Did you guys when was the first version released? And I imagine that wasn't in the cloud. Did you guys get into the cloud?
No, pure cloud. 2015, August 2015 is when we launched. I sold the company, the brokerage and the carrier business, on December 31st, 2014, with Ascend January the. And in August, we released the MVP of Ascend TMS. Everything was going great, but I kept pulling the pipe out and seeing the crud in the pipe, and I had to keep cleaning. Realized that certain parts of the pipe were getting cruddied up more often than others, and so we basically version 2 was working on the back end, because it's the back end that will slow you down. If you get to thousands of customers and they're all trying to, on a Monday morning, try to load their loads. That's an absolute base. You need to use specific technology that's handling that, because otherwise on Monday morning between 8 a.m. and 10, you're waiting because your database is just elastic cloud services. It's all BS in many regards, because there'll be bottlenecks in that layer of your technology that cannot serve up fast enough all those loads as people start rejiggering the loads, etc. So version 2 was the back end, and then version 3 is more front end oriented. So all the microservices are working beautifully. It's never finished. This is a journey that will last forever. And so now we're focused more on the front end, because as we've got more customers in different parts of the world, we want people never ever to have to call us to add certain things to a drop-down list, or we have our AWE. It's called Automated Workflow Engine. Awesome, because it's awesome. Automated Workflow Engine, and it's basically an if this then that. So it's a statement: if this happens, do that thing. So if a load is late, send a text message to Paul and to Leo. If this load goes on what status, got a maintenance issue, send an email to a. We try to build now a front. We've done a lot of this so far. We release it incrementally, but we're trying to front end more self-configurable, because we never ever want to have people calling us that we have to hard code things in the system. If you happen to be in Rwanda, this happened a few weeks ago. We got a paying customer, and we support 160 some currencies today, but the Rwanda currency was not in our system. So choice number 1 is hard code it, or choice number 2 is make it so that somebody can add a weird currency. We decided, rather than hard code something, and by the way, the Rwanda currency is called the Rwandan franc. And so we added that, and paying customer in Rwanda, because we focused on that front end of them being able to self-configure.
Got it. Yeah, and the other point you mentioned about the cloud, which is that they say, oh, it's elastic this, elastic that, but it's not like by moving into the cloud you automatically get scaling for free. The cloud is happy to take your money and allow you to launch more instances, but a lot of the challenges are with the database itself, scaling the database. It's easy to scale APIs. You just launch more instances, but scaling the database, that's a real challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.